Sneakers and Cleats, the podcast.
Welcome back to the Sneakers Cleats podcast. It is Thursday, December 12th. This is episode 156. Don Harris, Matt Roy here. I'm wearing this resplendent shirt to give a little bit of love to the Bernie All-Stars that we had it back in this summer. So that was great of them. What's going on, Don?
End of my work week, and I'm very happy about that. It has been a long week.
Putting long packages together takes a lot out of you.
Oh, I spent 20 hours on that 75th anniversary. It was a really cool day yesterday, though. Hats off to all of those, like Luis and Bob, who've worked here many years, part of the family that has been around since December 11th, 1949.
Yesterday was the 75th anniversary of WOAI.
Yesterday, the 75th anniversary. We celebrated all day yesterday. And because I don't know how he was voted to do this, because I guess they said, you're the one who's been here the longest.
They said, you're old, you do it.
You're old, you remember some of these people. And so it was a real labor of love, though. I started working on it on my off days on Saturday and Sunday last weekend and doing some research and finding video. And it was really cool to look back and see, you know, it is a rich history. When you say you're the first in anything and the first in San Antonio, we were the ABC, NBC, CBS affiliate all in one. To look back at those early days of television and how they did it, every show was live. It was music shows and entertainment shows and interview shows, and the commercials were live. People came in and read spots.
I didn't know Vern Lundquist was in San Antonio. That was cool to learn from your pieces.
Vern anchored here in 1966.
Love Vern.
We'll throw your what you did in the show notes so people can watch if they want.
Okay, yeah. There's a cool little story. It's about 4 minutes long on the history of the station, and if I do say so myself, it's interesting.
I thought it was good.
I learned a lot.
Yeah, absolutely. Always learn a lot from those kinds of pieces, but those they're so labor intensive sometimes, and so it takes a long time to put it together, especially when you care about something. You put a lot of time into it, and so it's like after it's done, you're like,
So people don't understand, I don't think, some of how they make the sausage stuff that we do, but in a story like that, where you have, I don't know, I want to say hundreds, but at least 100 of these images from old video and newspapers from...
You have to resize them. And
you have to resize every little clip as you're editing it. And there are little bitty things on the timeline, and so you're sitting there staring into a computer for 12 hours at a time. Yeah,
and plus when you're doing it, like, after a 6-minute piece takes 24 hours to edit. Like, it's a long time to edit. So. Anyway, we are got a lot of Spurs to talk about today, got a lot of Cowboys to talk about today.
Shout out Tom Guerrero.
For those who...
but we're waiting for it.
Yeah, he'll get on there eventually. Want to remind everyone to subscribe to the YouTube channel, News 4, Fox SA. That's where you'll see pieces like Don's, like mine, and whatnot. Plus, you'll get to see this podcast every Monday and Thursday. And download, rate, review the podcast version of the podcast, audio version, wherever you get your podcasts. I do mine on Apple, but that's just me. Spurs talk today. We got the number one high school player in the nation says he thinks he'd be a great fit here in San Antonio with Victor Wembanyama, so we'll talk about that. Plus, Chris Paul sat down with Tony Parker in something that I thought was a really cool interview. It's about a 22-minute interview that Chris Paul and Tony Parker did in the Spurs facility. Grabbed a few of the interesting nuggets out of there. We'll discuss that today on the pod. Plus, we'll talk a little bit of Cowboys today after they've basically been eliminated from playoff contention as of Monday. What's Mike McCarthy's future look like? Plus, the DeMarvion Overshown injury. We'll get into that, which is just devastating for him.
Let me ask you this real quick.
Yeah.
When was Chris Paul's rookie year?
He's in year 18, so it'd be, 2006, 2005, something like that?
Okay, so he came in about 3 years after Tony. I was going to say they're about the same age.
Close. I mean, they're about the same age. Tony retired when he was 37, and Chris Paul's about 39 right now. So Tony's like 43-ish, maybe 42?
Yeah.
Something like that. He just got he retired in 19. He got into the Hall of Fame in 24, and he retired when he was 37, so he's probably 42, 43 years old, if my math's right. But anyway, so I got trivia for you. Good thing.
Let's do it.
It's one I think you'll know.
Okay.
But we'll see.
Shoot.
The Spurs' big three
Tim, Tony, and Manu
hold the record for the most wins by a trio in NBA history.
Correct.
How many wins do they have? And this is just them on the court together in the same game. Like this isn't over the course of the dynasty. How many wins do they have? Because they have so many 50-win seasons in a row.
Oh, okay.
So this is just how many wins do the three of them have? It is an NBA record.
So if Tim Duncan won 50 games a year for 20 years, that's 1,000 games. I'm going to say they won.
But they were together for 14 seasons.
Okay. I'm going to say they won 763 games.
They won 575 games in games that they played together because some didn't play either.
Yeah, especially load management late.
If Tim, Tony, or Manu did not play, that does not count towards
it's a lot of games.
So, 575 games, though, is a lot. I mean, the same with the recent big three, the Clay, Steph, and Draymond Warriors. They got over 400 games. They're one of 13 teams, 13 trios that has won over 400 games together.
It is worth noting every so often, because we took it for granted so much, it is worth noting every so often, that Tim Duncan is the winningest regular season player of all time. He's the winningest playoff player of all time. People like to, Bill Russell won 11 championships. Tim Duncan won 2/3 more playoff games than Bill Russell.
There was also a lot more rounds of the playoffs.
That's correct.
So
that's correct.
Take it for what it's worth.
That's what I'm trying to say, is that it was so much easier to win a championship when you were Bill Russell. You won one round and you were in the finals. And for Tim Duncan to do what he did for 20 years and never have a season where he didn't win 50 games. Think about that.
I love Don getting on his Tim Duncan soapbox.
He's so great. If Tim Duncan had played in Boston or in New York City instead of San Antonio and done the exact same thing, it would be argued between him, Jordan, and LeBron. He would be number one. He would be in that conversation. But because he played in San Antonio, some of these morons.
That's true.
It's true.
He would not be in the conversation as the greatest player of all time.
Absolutely.
He would not.
Yes, he would.
This isn't the day for that debate.
Oh, that's insane not to think that. It's
Tim Duncan's not a greater player than LeBron is.
I'm not saying that he is. I'm saying he'd be in the conversation.
It would be a quick conversation.
No, it wouldn't.
No, that's not true.
It's not true.
He stands right next to LeBron.
He's not a greater player than LeBron James in the history of the NBA.
I agree with that statement. But I'm saying is, no idiot would put Larry Bird ahead of him on a list. Do you want me to compare the rest of the names?
That's fair enough. That's fair.
Okay.
But saying Larry Bird and saying LeBron and MJ are two different
I'm saying he would be
things.
listed as third instead of seventh or eighth in some of these dumb lists.
Okay. I can buy.
Okay.
Let's get into the rundown here, not off topic on Tim Duncan. So something we all found interesting this week, and we have a great article up on our website, News4 and Fox essay from Dusty Garza of Spurs Report, who kind of wrote about all this and has a little bit more context if you want to read about it.
About Tony?
About AJ. What's his last name? How do you pronounce it? Dybantsa. Thank you. I was going to pronounce
T is silent.
T is silent, as we learned. So AJ Dybantsa, the 17-year-old senior at Utah Prep, he went on First Take this week to announce his
BYU.
Yeah, his school of choice. He's going to BYU over other schools like Duke and North Carolina and all of them. So he's the number one basketball recruit in the country. And Stephen A. and him were talking on First Take. And this isn't one of those screaming A moments, which is good. But it's they were talking on First Take about where he sees himself fitting in the NBA. And this is what he had to say.
Is there a system that exists out there that you think is tailor-made for you?
In the NBA?
Yes.
Spurs and Magic.
Spurs and Magic. Mm-hmm. Why those two teams?
See, look. You watched the film.
Of course.
How you think me and Wemby would play?
You know, Wemby's 7'5", and his brother versatile. He pulling up from 3-point range at 7'5". You got a shot.
I don't know how much film Stephen A. is watching, but that's besides the point.
What was AJ trying to say? He plays like LeBron?
No, he was saying he thinks he would fit well with Victor.
Wemby.
And
every player in the league says that.
Exactly. But I want to look at it from the 30,000-foot view. He's a 17-year-old kid. He might not even make the NBA. We have no idea what's going to happen. He will probably, but we have no idea what's going to happen between him and how good of a player he's going to end up being. But from the 30,000-foot view, this is yet another name we can add to the list of players who reference Victor as someone who they want to play with.
Of course.
And that says to me that it's less now about the book was out on San Antonio for a long time. The free agents don't want to come here. Rookies don't want to come here, blah, 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 blah. I think that's changing now, and players want to play with the players and not so much for the city that they're in. You know what I mean? I think they want those teammates. They want to play with the great ones.
Well, okay, I think two things there. Yes, they do want to play with great players. They don't care what cities it's in.
Yeah, it's less so about the market.
It's always about the money. And I don't think that – I think there was a misnomer that teams didn't want – that free agents didn't want to play in San Antonio because it was a small market or whatever. It's always about the money. When the Spurs had money – to go after LaMarcus Aldridge in free agency or Richard Jefferson in free agency, they always got the guy they wanted. The Spurs never had a lot of money in free agency, and that's why guys didn't want to come here. But you notice that the guys did come here that didn't require a lot of money. The Tracy McGrady's of the world at the end of their careers. There was 5 or 6 of instances like that where there were guys that wanted to come try to win a championship when it didn't require money. But the Spurs, because they were paying Tim, Tony, and Manu, never had the max to offer free agents.
But that's different in this kind of scenario because right now, one, they're not paying a bunch of people. And two, you're not coming to this version of the Spurs to win a championship.
Correct.
You went to those versions of the Spurs to try and get carried to one.
Correct.
So that's a little bit different now too.
Yeah, and I think guys see the future. They're not winning championships right now, but they're going to.
Right. I mean, at least they'll be in contention,
for sure.
We think, for them.
Yeah.
But I just thought it was interesting that a guy who has never set foot in the NBA, hasn't even set foot in college yet, is thinking about that far ahead. Who do I want to play for? Who do I hope maybe has that number 1 pick in 2026 after this Cooper Flag draft, the next season after that? Who am I hoping that
it's not going to be the Spurs. Unless it's somebody else's pick.
I mean, it would have to be someone else's pick. Well, it's just like this year. They're not going to have the first pick this year unless it's Atlanta.
And Atlanta's playing pretty well, actually.
Yeah, well, yeah. Did you see the ticket prices for the Emirates Cup dropping like rocks after they made the finals?
I didn't see it.
It's so funny.
Are they in the championship game?
I think they're in the championship game with the Rockets. So
the Rockets are good.
The game they won last night was BS, but yeah, they are good. So the Warriors are good now too.
Yeah. Spurs. This version of the Spurs. I'm trying to think when Duncan was young, it was Utah, and then it was Dallas and the Lakers. This version of the Spurs is going to have Western Conference landmines in order to get to be a championship team because Houston and Oklahoma City, and there's others. There's still Denver and whoever else, but there's some really good young teams in the West.
What I really found interesting about that is it's stuff that we talked about in the summer is that players are going to want to play with Victor in that even now as the free agent contracts, you can now be traded if you signed a free agent contract on December 15th, I think, and then like people like Lauri Markkanen can start to be traded in January, early February. People like that are going to be like, you know what? I'm cool with going to the Spurs.
Sure.
It's not the Lakers and the Knicks and the Miamis and all those guys of the world anymore.
100.
That stuff doesn't matter because they want to play with Victor. So I just thought that part kind of interesting. Let's get to the Chris Paul sit down because that's also interesting. So
just real quick,
yeah.
Johnny Garcia was asking, since we were talking about championships and all
Johnny,
he wanted to know how many years you guys think the Spurs are away from number 6.
At least 3.
Yeah, I would agree with that. It's going to be a climb.
I would say from winning number 6, at least 3. From getting to where we're talking about them going to the finals and maybe a conference championship and kind of.
You never know.
I would say maybe 2 years from that, but 3 years from actually having expectation of a title.
LeBron won in year 7. Michael won in year 7. Tim won in year 2.
Tim was set up for success, though.
Absolutely.
What year was LeBron?
7.
What year was Tim?
2.
Okay.
Yeah. Tim had better teammates.
LeBron went to, 9 straight finals? So.
Yeah, in the awful Eastern Conference.
I mean, with my Miami Heat. So.
Yeah.
He had to go to a different team. Is that what he had to do?
Yeah, he had to team up with the other guys.
All right, Cleveland, calm down.